Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented as always by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. We are live from the Cincy Light Studios here on the Bearcat Journal Twitch and YouTube channels, and wherever you may be listening at a later date. But George, it is New Year's Eve. You've got complete chaos going on behind you.
I am surrounded by chaos.
I hope you had a great Christmas.
Yes, I hope you did as well. I did.
We did. Thank you. I was telling you that I'm gonna tell the story here, but I had this. We've talked about the logo on this logo in particular on one of our very first shows. You thought it was the funniest logo, or maybe your favorite logo, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
The running Bengal tiger from the early, I guess, late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah. A logo they never really used officially. It was kind of like their lead up to the franchise, operating and playing games logo, and it never became really official with them. And that was my absolute favorite logo of the Bengals, and still is.
Well, they should use it more because it's.
Where did you find it?
I found it at Rally House. So Rachel and I, we had a staycation, if you will, in Cincinnati this past weekend. We didn't have the boys, so we just had the girls. We left the girls stay with my mom, and we went and got a Verbo in Mount Adams. We went and did things in Cincinnati. On, I guess it was Friday afternoon, I bought tickets to the Bengals game because she's never been to a Bengals game. So I was like, I didn't bring any Bengals stuff. She didn't bring any Bengals stuff. Let's go to Rally House and let's get some Bengals stuff to wear to the Bengals game, because I just spur of the moment bought tickets. We saw a hell of a game. We'll get to that later on in the show, but that's where I got this hoodie. It's fun. It's got this. It cuts off here with the hoodie, but it's also got Bengals on the back.
You were dressed up. I look like I just got out of a gym, and trust me, I didn't.
It's fine.
But an old red spring training shirt. What's this from? 2006. I found this in the bottom of a drawer,
man. But we will, like I said, we'll get to the Bengals game here in a bit, but let's start out with the Bearcats started their conference play against Kansas State last night, and they lose 70-67. I've had a night to sleep on. How I feel, I don't know that I feel much different than I did yesterday, but George Vogel, how do you feel after the Bearcats' first game in conference play?
I don't feel much better than I did last night right after that game. I can tell you that. What a weird game, because it felt like they were losing by a decent margin the entire way. It just felt like they weren't in the game, yet they were. End up losing by 3, and it just didn't feel that close. I don't know why. Then you look at the box score, and it's like that thing. You look at all the critical numbers except free throws, and you'd say Cincinnati won this game. They shot as well, if not better, made more field goals, had less turnovers, had more or they did have more turnovers, and that hurt early in the game. But they had more rebounds, more offensive rebounds, more points in the paint. I think I don't know if they had more points off turnovers, but I'm looking at all these key figures, and it's like I can't explain that game other than those first few minutes were really, really critical when UC had all those turnovers, couldn't make shots, and I'm gonna complain about the half-court offense in a second, because I thought it got really, really clunky. I don't know why. Maybe because CMOS wasn't, playing his usual self. There was something Kansas State could have done, I guess, to take them out of that. But early in the game, they got some point-blank shots, and Dylan Mitchell missed some shots that I don't think he's usually going to miss, that were 6-footers, 8-footers at most, less. Yeah. I mean, right around the rim, they just didn't finish very well at all early in that game and got in that hole. And Kansas State has talent, as we saw. And I was really worried. You know, you look at their scores, who they've played, and you look at their talent, and you're like, holy God, if they finally put it together with the talent they have, they'll be pretty tough to beat, especially at home. But I was really hoping it wouldn't happen last night, and it kind of did. They played much better. I think, you know, as the game went on, I felt like the offense kind of got more and more clunky in the half court. It just seems like it's a lot of dribbling around until there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock, and it's here we go. Let's just find a little bit of desperation. And I just didn't feel like really any of the players got into a good rhythm at any point in that game. Dan kind of did at the end of the first half. You know, there were some great plays by Thomas. Mitchell's numbers looked good at the end of the game. Still love that kid and the way he plays. I don't know what happened to CMOS and what Kansas State did to neutralize him, but you know, his numbers of late have been a little concerning. He wasn't going to shoot over 50% from three the entire season, so you knew there was going to be a course correction somewhere.
Sure.
And we've seen it, but we've seen it in spades. I mean, this is just he's going to have to find it again to help this team, because they're going to have a lot of games like last night, especially on the road. And they went into a hornet's nest. Think about this. You know, it's the conference opener. Kansas State has some talent. You got a packed house and a ranked team's coming in. You know those fans are going to be right down your throat. You know those players are going to come out fired up. And it looked like UC just wasn't ready for that at the beginning of the game. I mean, they kind of got steamrolled a little bit early, and then they get back in it. They actually get a lead. And I'm like, okay, they've settled down. But they couldn't get it done. And that's, you know, is it panic button time? Heck no. Is it concern time? Yeah. Concerned, because I'm concerned that even in, you know, some other games, I've been a little disappointed maybe with what the half court offense gives them at times. And for God's sakes, if there's anyone doing anything on the other team early in the game, you got to stick Day Thomas on him and just let him eat him up, because that dude has got to be on, as long as it's a guard. I mean, I'm not saying go guard,
sure,
but you know, UC certainly had trouble with the Kansas State guard last night, and he put up some good numbers. Had some turnovers, but all that kind of stopped. You know, then the turnovers start when Day Thomas gets on.
Yeah, when your top three scorers are Dan, Jizzle, and Dylan, 18, 11, and 15 there, and outside of that, no one else in double digits. Only one player on your bench doing anything offensively.
Very disappointing. Very disappointing.
And that's Day. As you mentioned, he was lights out defensively as well. So he did it kind of both ways. Outside, the only knock I had on Day outside of the NBA 3 that he took, which I hate when he shoots those, was that dunk, and that ended up an 8-point swing as he misses the two there, and then they hit 2 threes. But I think you can still be extremely critical of how poorly this game was officiated, while also realizing that Cincinnati beat themselves. I don't believe that it was the referee's fault that they lost this game. I do, however, believe that it was terribly reffed, and I also believe that Cincinnati beat themselves.
So we were laughing about, like, early on in the officiating, and I watched it with a couple buddies, and we're looking at each other like, I guess it's the Big 12 opener, because, you know, at first they weren't calling anything. Like, guys are shoving off with arms in the lane, going to the hoop, and UC got away with one or two of those too.
They did. They got called on one, but they also got away with one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I think Jizzle got away with one in the first half.
He did. Most certainly did.
And then by the end of the game, they're calling like that little bump on Mitchell in the lane when he got an end one. Yep. And it's like earlier in the game, this would not have been called. I mean, there was so much worse contact early in the game than that they didn't call. So it was a weirdly officiated game. It seemed like deeper into the game, they got a little more ticky tacky on the calls.
Well,
And
up until Kansas State had what I think 3 team fouls at the end of the last few minutes of the game.
yeah, that was
they only had 5 fouls the entire game prior to that point.
right. And that's been an issue with UC though, where they, whatever reason, don't create these situations where they draw contact. But at the other, but that was extreme. Okay, and then you go to the couple plays with Aziz, the goaltend, which that was close, and I thought replay showed it was more a block than a goaltend.
It did.
It looked like his thumb hit it before it hit the backboard, and by then that's it. That's all you got to do, and that ball was not going to go in the bucket. That's what I'm just like, oh no. When I saw him go up, I'm like, please don't goaltend, because that ball isn't going in. So that was a tough break. And then when he fell down or was shoved down, and they call it travel, that was a big play too. But UC had their chances down the stretch. They were right there, and just could not close the door on the road. And that's a tough loss. That's a tough loss. And there's going to be more. It is the Big 12. And I was just worried that Kansas State and those talented transfers they brought in would finally start gelling. I was just hoping it would be a week or two after when they did, because they played a pretty decent game last night.
LASIK.com did actually put out that they would, for free, adjust any Big 12 officials' eyesight. And they are of course headquartered here in Cincinnati, so they were.
It was bizarre how it changed as the game went along. It really was. I didn't get it, but I'm not an official, but it just seemed a very oddly refereed game, but still a game. If the Cats play their better basketball, they can get out of there with a win.
Yeah, I'm with you on CMOS. A little concerning at this point. You've got to figure teams are going to scheme to take him out of the game. You
Correct.
have to find a way in the chess match to re-scheme him open. You can't just be like, well, I guess he's done today.
Right. And hopefully they get to the drawing board, and I think they got enough brain power to make that adjustment, but they got to be ready to do it on the fly. You can't wait till you drop the Big 12 opener. You got to be able to do that on the fly. And I'm not a basketball coach either, so I don't have the easy answers yet. But also that bench thing is just so concerning. That Day was the only help off the bench. And Page was disappointing. Hickman was disappointing. It's just you got to find some help somewhere. And Betsy launches that one shot, and that's kind of his thing. But boy, what a brick that was. So hopefully they get their legs back under them and get a win this Saturday and can kind of build on that. But I really, when you looked at the non-conference play of both teams, I'm not saying I chalked this up as a win because it's a road game in the Big 12, but I thought their chances were pretty good. And that's why, it's very disappointing as we sit here today with Cincinnati 0-1 in conference play.
Yeah, Cincinnati was 3 of 4 on dunks, and that's a far lower number than what they were in averaging in conference or in non-con, and 13 of 20 layups. That's not a great number.
No, and as I said, they missed some of those early that really killed them. That you can't miss. You can't miss those opportunities that you work so hard to get layups or get 4-footers. You got to convert them. And I also felt like in that half court that there were probably a little too many attempts at lobs again when they got into that habit last year. And it just feels like they fell into the same old trap again. And teams know what Cincinnati's going to try to do in those situations. So they play for that. They plan for that. And, it felt like it was overused last night, and it just wasn't there sometimes when the guards tried to force it.
I was less concerned with that, more concerned with 10 offensive rebounds, only 10 only 10 second chance points. Don't love that. And one of the stats you brought up earlier, points off turnovers. Cincinnati lost that battle 15-8. Of course, they did turn the ball over 15 times.
Yeah, that was and the early ones that put them in the hole. None of them are good, right? But after that early run, the turnovers evened out a little bit for the rest of the way. But man, oh man, I mean, they had 4 turnovers in what felt like the first 3 or 4 minutes, and that's just not that. That's not what we've seen when they execute well.
Yep. So I don't know. Didn't love it. Obviously, you have another game coming up quickly. As every week, you're going to have 2 chances, win or lose.
This is going to be. It's still going to be a fun. I mean, we're going to have a blast. We're going to have a ball this season watching this unfold. I still believe they will have their moments, and I will be on hand Saturday to hopefully see one of those moments Saturday.
First home game in conference play will be Saturday, as you alluded to. 7-5 Arizona will be coming into Cincinnati at 5th third. Arizona did play TCU in their first conference game and won 90-81. A lot of offensive firepower there from Arizona. Concerned are you? This while their record was only 6-5 entering conference play, Arizona, mind you, was a preseason ranked team.
Yep, it's another team that's got plenty of talent and didn't play up to it in the non-conference, but here we go. You know, are they getting nervous at the wrong time for Cincinnati? You know what I mean?
I guess at least you have this one at home. You're not starting off with 2 away games against tough opponents. You're playing 1-1.
Right. And that's what they have to do. I mean, they've obviously got a tough conference schedule out of the box, and that's what made last night even more important. But again, they've got how many games left in conference play? 19, something like that.
Yep.
So long way to go. You know, it's like April in baseball. So we'll see, but they got some stuff to fix, and at least they know what they have to fix. And we'll see if Wes and the crew can get it together. But I am concerned about some recent trends, and that starts with Lukosius.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall at practice. I don't know if they practiced today. I'm sure they did film today. But
my guess is he may have them in the gym tonight at 11:59 and say, "Screw New Year's." That would be a Bob Huggins move. Now Hugs would be sitting there having his drinks while they're practicing. He would make sure those players didn't have any fun.
Unreal. I don't have anything left on the Bearcats unless you do. Football.
No, I just looking forward to Saturday and hope to see a little different deal. And you know what? It's going to be, they're going to have the fans on their side. It's going to be a packed house, and it'll be a fun time. And hopefully they rise to that occasion and get their mojo back a little bit here. You know, it's concerning because when you look, okay, they've played 2 road games, lost at Villanova, lost Kansas State. And then you're looking at, they haven't proven to me yet. And I know this is going to sound dumb because they only lost once in the non-conference. But it doesn't feel like that they're a top half of the field of 64 at this point to me, based on what I've seen them do against decent competition.
I agree. You got to figure it out.
Yep.
Football, not much to talk about. There's been some moves. There's been some guys that they've brought in. We'll see when this all settles. We'll talk probably more about the incoming transfer class. But I don't have much to add in that regard right now.
Yeah, there's a stuff hanging out there that and I guess when do they open back up? After tomorrow, and then maybe we'll see what else they pull out of the portal. But so far it's sketchy at best. But at the same time, they've been very specific in what they're looking for. And so they're looking for fits rather than, these mega superstars, I guess.
You'll of course have more guys entering the portal as bowl season comes to an end. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
It makes all this stuff going on and all these quarterbacks bouncing around that have had good years, with their team. And I'm an old man, so I'm not used to this yet. And it's taken me a while to get used to it. It's crazy.
Well,
I
just
don't
when
know
you
how
get
his
used to
coach.
it, a new wrinkle appears, like the JUCO rule. So,
It does.
in any case, we will move on to the Cincinnati Bengals. Had a game. I was there, as I talked about at the beginning of this show, but they're still alive somehow, some way. They're still alive. They need essentially to make the playoffs. You need two things to happen right now, I believe. Maybe three.
Three.
Well, you've got to beat the Steelers first and foremost,
Right.
which that's always an adventure in and of itself.
Yep.
You also need Miami to lose.
Yep.
And you need Denver to lose to Kansas City.
Right. Kansas City, I don't know. I keep hearing they're not going to play anyone.
Well, I saw an interesting statistic, and I wish I could point out who dropped it today. I know I saw it on Twitter, but it was Andy Reid has rested his starters in 3, maybe 4 different games, whichever it was. And of those 3 or 4 games, he's only lost 1. Resting starters in the last game of the series.
Yeah, that's a crazy.
So he's done it 4 times. They've won twice. Once they went to overtime and lost. Only once has he lost in regulation. But he's 2-2, sitting his starters since like 2013.
That's a hell of a record. Now he's playing a team that's desperate for a win and at their place this time. And that's probably, I don't know what the line is now. I think the last I saw, wasn't Denver favored by like 9? Because it started.
It was 10.5 yesterday.
What was it?
10.5.
Yeah, okay. That thing started at like 6.5 when it came out. And I guess when Reed kind of, or somebody on the team alluded that they probably wouldn't be playing a lot of their starters, that thing shot up like crazy. And I think people are assuming that too. Here's what I wouldn't assume, because they've got a week off, right? They got the bye. Do you want those guys sitting around for 2 weeks? Wouldn't you, I don't know. Would you run Mahomes out to start the game and get a series? Maybe not with his leg, the shape it's in. Maybe he needs the 2 weeks, but it's an interesting scenario, and it's a tough decision. Probably not tough for Andy Reid because he's been around so long and apparently knows what the hell he's doing. But I don't know. It's just it's fascinating, and even with the Bengals playing the Steelers too, that's fascinating. In that, what does Pittsburgh do? And it sounds like they're going full bore because they want to keep in that 5 spot, so they go to Houston instead of going to Buffalo. Because if they fall a spot, or they would go to Los Angeles, I guess, to play the Chargers. And I don't know about you, but I think I'd rather go to Houston.
Baltimore.
Well, if they have to go to Baltimore, that's death.
If they end up the 6th, if they lose and end up the 6th seed, they would go to Baltimore.
And
Baltimore's the
Baltimore
3.
win, which Baltimore will win, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Baltimore would be the 3, Pittsburgh would be the 6, so they would play round 1 in Baltimore.
Yeah, and they do not want that. They do not want that come hell or high water. But the Steelers are struggling right now. You look at their last 3 games, and they have not looked good. In fact, I think the most they've scored is like 17 in that stretch. And we know how that Bengals offense is clicking. And we also know how the Steelers seem to have, a bit of their number. But I'm not putting anything past Joe Burrow in this offense right now. And I think I'll go out on a limb and say the Bengals get the win. And then we'll see where the chips fall on Sunday. And I'm not planning on them falling the right way, but it's going to make for an interesting day. Let's watch this weekend.
Let's talk about Joe Burrow though in the game from this past week. And of course, it goes to overtime after the doinked field goal and all of that with the backup kicker in Cade York. I felt bad for the kid, truthfully. I don't know if you knew this happened or not, George, but you knew it was a bad omen at halftime when they have a Donato's field goal challenge.
Oh yeah.
And four guys come out and guys and gals come out and they all miss, and the 5th guy pretends he has a hammy injury, and Shane Graham comes out and takes off his socks and shoes and is doing the whole stretching thing, and he shanks not 1 but 2 He missed both of them. So it wasn't a good omen. That Shane Graham's out on he's out on the field barefoot for Lord knows what reason, but he missed both of them, and they were only 30-yarders, and it was I didn't love any of that.
I will be honest. I thought the kid would make it, but you know what? We're Bengals people, and in the back of your head, it's gnawing at you like, something funky's going to happen here.
Yeah.
It's going to get blocked, or it's going to hit an upright, or a bad snap, something. And it's just, it's man, I don't know why Cincinnati fans have that just ingrained, and I had that gnawing feeling, even though it was, a bit of a chip shot, really. And I felt bad for that kid too. And I thought it was hilarious that in overtime, Burrow just flat went for the throat and said, "Screw it, we're scoring a touchdown."
Sure did.
And if this was correct, that's the Bengals' first offensive touchdown in an overtime ever. I saw that's crazy.
Chad's nodding emphatically down in the bottom of the screen. So yes, that is accurate.
Overtime's been around a while. You'd think at some point somebody would have popped something, but that's just I was surprised to hear that. But God bless them for getting it done, because obviously they had to, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I really felt pretty good about the Bengals' chances at home and the way they've been playing. Now, are they knocking off great teams? No. Are they knocking off great quarterbacks? No. So that makes me a little leery about them going into Pittsburgh. I don't consider Russell Wilson a great quarterback right now, but he's experienced, throws a good deep ball, had really good success checking down against the Bengals in that first game. I think the Bengals probably try to take that away a little more this time. And then they've got to stop that run, because that's really what the Steelers want to try to do to you first is run the ball down your throat. So it's not going to be easy, but the one thing I hang on to is how well the Bengals offense is playing, and how terrible the Steelers offense has been lately.
Yeah, Joe Burrow was 39 of 49 for 412 yards, 3 touchdowns, putting up Madden stats, although he was sacked 7 times. Yuck.
Oh.
But
not understanding what's going on there, by the way, Aaron. And I like this line coach back when he was,
first round.
They brought good linemen who have good reputations at other spots. And it just seems like for some reason they're still having trouble here with the offensive line. Everyone complains, and rightfully so, back in the day about the Bengals not valuing maybe offensive linemen, especially the interior, as much as they should. And you go out and get Kappa, you go out and get Karras. You've got the Browns at the tackles. You draft Mims in the first round, and to me, he looks like he's going to be a keeper. But there's still issues with pass blocking.
Orlando Brown is playing on a broken leg. He's got 2 fractures in his leg. In his tibia, I believe.
It just seems like they can't fix the thing no matter what they do.
Whichever is the non-load bearing bone in that leg there. And then you also have, look, the guard spot that has been Cordell Volson's in large part over the last 2 seasons has been the largest weakness on this offensive line. I think that's going to affect the guy on either side of you when you're not holding your weight on a line. It's been filled currently by Cody Ford, and
right,
I don't love that either. All things being honest, that dude had a lot going on this past Sunday because his ex-girlfriend was hosting an anti-Bengals party right down at the Banks at the Tin Roof. So that's a whole mess in and of itself.
What hell? No, hold on. I don't know about this. What's this all about?
He had some TikTok girlfriend. I don't know anything about her. I don't even know her name, if I'm being completely honest. But I guess he cheated on her. She got mad, and she had an anti-Bengals party at the Tin Roof, which shame on them for even hosting that. Get out of here.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that happens. I mean, that's right down the street. What do you think would happen if a bar over there by Well, I always call it Three Rivers Stadium and Heinz Field, but what is it? Acrisure Stadium. One of those bars over there on that side of the river. What if they hosted one of those? An anti-Steelers party. What do you think would happen?
Ed said it's an ex-fiance he cheated 3 months after proposing.
That's not good. That'll get an anti-you-know-what party.
It is what it is. But the guy should be focusing on starting, and here he's got to focus on some other ridiculousness. I don't know. Like I said, I mean, it's just that guard spot needs to be shored up, and they don't love to spend. They don't love to spend money on guards. We know that. I feel like they look at guard the same way they look at linebacker on defense, and that is as long as you get a guy who's average at best, the rest should take care of it. And we've seen what that costs you. You've had guards who've been really good that you've let walk.
Oh yeah. I mean, they definitely have. I mean, no, you're going to get me stirred up on that whole Kevin Zeitler thing again when that happened.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
They should have dealt with him a year ahead of time. But yeah, they're slow. They're slow to react to get those interior guys locked down. They took care of Ted last year, I guess. But I don't. Part of the problem too is this: they've been trying to draft to fix that defense too here the last couple of years. I know they got Mims in the first round last year. I was all for it. But they're not getting anywhere with these drafts of these defensive players. I mean, these guys have not stepped up and played to the level they were drafted at on defense. So this draft, they're back in the same boat. They've got to find defensive help when it gets to that point. And, are you going to be able to go out and buy it if you're going to bring, T. Higgins back and pay Jamar Chase? I don't know how that's going to work. How are they going to pull this off? I'm not sure they can. I'm very interested. These off seasons in the NFL are always interesting, and I thought last year was going to be a big one for them, and it was. This one's going to be as big, if not bigger. They've got to fix that defense, and I know it's played a little better lately. But then you also look on the flip side who they've been playing and which quarterbacks they've been going against. They're not going against Patrick Mahomes every week or even name any of them that are decent, Lamar Jackson, any of those guys. Those guys seem to carve them up a little bit, and they haven't been playing against that caliber of a quarterback. And when you get in the playoffs, that's the caliber of quarterback you're going to see. So they got to fix that defense, and it's going to be hard to do it with money if they're going to give it all to the offensive side.
Well, interesting you bring up needing to get things done a year early with Kevin Zeitler because they didn't. And Joe Burrow in the press conference today brought up the fact that you need to get things done a year ahead of time.
Yes.
And he's getting a little more reckless is not the word because it's certainly not that, but he's getting a little bit more calculated in what he says to the media and when he says it to the media. T. Higgins also in the last week has said that he's not worried about being paid as the wide receiver one. Sounds like he's willing to take a little bit less money than maybe he was before he fired his agent a couple weeks ago. As he now has Jamar Chase's agent. And it sounds like that all three guys in their mindset, at least what they're saying out loud, want to stay together. That all said, you also had Sheldon Rankins today, who is placed on the non-injury sick forever list or whatever is going on with that dude. Who knows? I hope it's not anything super serious like cancer or anything like that. But the guy is apparently done in Cincinnati. I believe he is a $9 million cap cut and $2 million dead space. So I think Sheldon Rankins will never be seen in Cincinnati again unless he is on the visiting team. So there's some money that you can figure out how to find. I believe I've seen numbers as high as 88.5 in cap space, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've seen on Twitter by the people who like to play those games with the with the Bengals financials. I'll believe it when I see it. I think that whatever number you see, subtract about 20 to 30, and that's probably your real number. So hopefully the cap goes crazy again and you're able to do some of these things. But this goes back to the conversation we had in the offseason George, when we were talking about, I know I was talking about, you agreed that Jamar Chase needed to be signed last offseason. If you're going to bring T back, you needed to do that 2 off seasons ago. Now the price tag's gone up. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's going to win the Triple Crown. And now what? Now you're paying him bigger than anybody in the history of ever.
Correct. He will be the highest paid wide receiver come hell or high water.
Deservedly so.
And that's a big number. And they could have avoided that. And then I don't know what they can last off season, but based on where we are now, they're going to pay a hell of a lot more now. I mean, they are. Like you talk about a guy who went out, and I got to give him a lot of credit because, you know, if they did tell him, hey, we're going to start working on this and we're going to throw something at you, and then he doesn't hear something again, and then he goes out there and sticks it in their face like he did this year, performing the way he did. But he still seems very open to playing here and negotiating in good faith. But it could get interesting because if something's not done by next training camp, what are we going to do? I mean, is he going to be sitting out of training camp again like he did this year? Is he going to sit out some games? What the hell is he going to do to force their hand?
You put it on the back burner for as long as you could, and it has to get done this offseason.
What? And that's I'm just going to tell you, like, what I've learned going along and being my age, and you probably know it now. It took me a while to learn it. But the longer you just let a problem like simmer, then it starts cooking, then it's boiling. I mean, you got to take care of those problems earlier than later, or you got a much bigger mess on your hands. And that's kind of where they find themselves.
And with Joe Burrow being the loudest voice at the microphone for the Cincinnati Bengals, and him getting involved, that's not a good look for your front office.
No, it's not. It's not. And you know, I gotta give Joe a lot of credit because he's, as you said, calculated, assertive, and dropped that, like when he dropped that nugget about T, and that he fully expected that he would be back next year, and they would. I just, he didn't put the monkey on their back. He put a 600-pound gorilla on the front office's back. But you know, I think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in 2025 as we ring in the new year tonight, George. We've been doing this for about almost 40 minutes now. I'm going to let you get back. Somehow your wife must have taken the kids elsewhere.
They went to we got like 2 rooms in this place, and we got the 14-year-old nephew and a couple of his friends. Something went on. They're gone now. So, I mean,
I'm guessing food.
I may just sit here looking into this phone the rest of the night drinking these. It's
well, I want to wish anybody out there who's listening, watching, whatever way that you are taking in this podcast, a belated Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever holiday it is that you celebrate, and also a Happy New Year as we are ringing in 2025 this evening at midnight. But George, what a year it's been. I look forward to seeing what 2025 holds for us.
Been a lot of fun, and 2025 is going to come out of the gate firing on Saturday in Pittsburgh. So, you know, it's not going to take long for the new year to provide some good drama for us. And yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody out there, and whatever you do celebrate, and a Happy New Year. And I hope everybody is safe and prosperous and has a very productive year, because I can tell you where I sit, 2024 was an absolute bitch at times, but I got my back surgery out of the way. I'm doing better. I had my first physical therapy today, and I'm ready to attack that. And, you know, hopefully things are looking up. And believe me, that was not the worst thing that happened this year. It was a hell of a year, but we're going to try to turn it around in 2025.
All right. Well, you got your Bearcats tipping off at, it's 2:30, if I'm not mistaken, against Arizona. And then you've got the Bengals against the Steelers at 8 o'clock. So Saturday is a lot of sports coming at you from the Queen City. But for George Vogel, for Cincy Light Studios, for Bearcat Journal, this was another episode of Jordan's Jungle, brought to you by Remington Tavern. You can always find them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140. Daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m. $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays. Bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Instagram at Remington Cincy. Follow them on Facebook. Happy 2025. We'll see you next year.
Happy New Year. Thank you, Aaron.